Hi everybody, thank you for joining me. So in the middle of December 2022, I received this in the post, The McCartney Legacy, Volume 1 by Adrian Sinclair and Alan Kozin, and in early March I have just finished reading this. And I didn't want to do a sort of a quick review before I'd had a chance to read it. I didn't think that was fair on anybody. I wanted to finish the book first, which I have done now. And I want to give you my thoughts on it. I've been giving my thoughts sort of as I go through it on Twitter over the past few weeks, but this is the first time I've really kind of gathered them together in one place. This book was originally intended by Adrian and Alan to be a kind of a recording sessions biography of Paul, what was going on in this volume 1 in the early 70s with Paul's recording sessions. And they quickly realised that they couldn't really tell the story of the music without telling the story of the man himself. They go into detail about that in the sort of end credits of this book. And so it's grown into something much bigger than they originally intended. But my God, I am so glad it has. The main thing I can say about this book is it's the book we've been waiting for on Paul McCartney. There's a name of somebody else who I'm going to have to refer to in this video, of Mark Lewison. I'm going to have to compare this to the work that Mark does. I'll come on to that more later on, but first of all, what I would say is that I've kind of always hoped that if and when Mark finally finishes the tune-in books, that he would be able to go on and do a similar kind of thing for Paul McCartney's career. And I don't feel that anymore. We don't need it. This is it. This book is incredible, to be honest. I have absolutely loved reading it. What I don't really want to do during this review is give away too many spoilers, so I'm not going to go telling you loads of things that are revealed in this book that I had no idea about. But just suffice to say that at least every few pages you are going to read several things that you never knew about the life and career of Paul McCartney. I absolutely guarantee that. It starts off in the period of kind of the last quarter of 1969. The Beatles as a four have gone off in their own separate ways. Paul and Linda up to Scotland, to the remoteness of their farm up near Campbelltown. And it kind of starts there. It occasionally dips back in time to give a little bit of backstory relevant to things that are happening at the time. But essentially that's where this book starts. And it finishes with the kind of immediate aftermath of the release of Band on the Run. So that's the time period we're looking at here. And I've read a lot of Paul McCartney books over the years. I've read some very, very good Paul McCartney books over the years. But I've read nothing that puts me into the scenarios like this book does. So in terms of what was going on with Paul up in Scotland whilst he tried to process the end of the Beatles, whilst he had all the business wranglings to deal with, I've got so much more of an appreciation now of how the things that Paul McCartney was doing during the first kind of 3 or 4 years after the Beatles split, how much everything was kind of dictated to and influenced by, and in some cases blown apart by, what was happening with his relationship with the other Beatles, the business relationships especially, him trying to get out of his Apple responsibilities, his lack of relationship with Alan Klein. It really sort of sets you in the mind of what Paul was going through in this book. And in terms of the making of the music as well, so the McCartney sessions, the sessions that happened at Paul's house in Cavendish Avenue, the writing up in Scotland, the recording sessions at Abbey Road, you really feel like you're there. And I've learned so much about what was kind of the process that he was going through to make that particular album. And then as it evolved then into the Ram sessions, one of the things that you learn with this book is just how busy Paul was. There was very little spare time. Okay, him and Linda would go off for a lot of weekends away in sort of all around the world. But essentially, this man was working so hard in those first few years. You get to go to, you almost feel like you're going to the Ram sessions in New York and being there in that studio as he puts the band together, as he brings in Denny Sywell for drums and the likes of Dave Spinoza and Hugh McCracken to work on Ram. You feel like you're in those Ram sessions, and then with the other work that went on in London afterwards to polish it up. And then moving on to Thrillington, how the Thrillington sessions came about fairly soon after Ram. Again, you feel like you're there in the studio as that album was being created. And it's like that with the other albums as well. Wildlife, you learn so much about the putting together of Wings, of Denny Laine being brought in, Denny Sywell being retained as Wings was created, and the sessions for Wildlife, those sort of fairly quick sessions, which, I mean, they'd had no rehearsal time really before they made Wildlife. They pretty much got together as a unit and went straight into the studio and recorded Wildlife. It's crazy. But again, you're right in the middle of those sessions. You're right in the middle of the university tour of 1972. There's still one particular point where it does go into fantastic detail about the university tour, far more than anywhere else, but there's still one point where I'm still not quite sure. There's a video that I linked at the end of this that I did all about one particular gig on the university tour where I've still kind of got evidence that something different happened, but this may well be right and it may well blow apart the video that I put together. I'm still not quite sure. I'm still looking into that. I won't give any more spoilers away unless you actually want to watch that video. But again, then going on to the Wings Over Europe tour, it's covered in so much depth. And then you go straight into the Red Rose Speedway sessions and you're really understanding more about the pressures that Wings were under. It's well known that the band weren't paid particularly brilliantly, and it wasn't just a case that one day before they went off to Band on the Run that all of a sudden Denny Sywell and Henry McCulloch decided they didn't want to be in Wings. You get to see how that was kind of brewing for such a long time beforehand, before it did eventually all just fall apart before the Band on the Run sessions. But again, Band on the Run, you feel like you're in Lagos with the band. You learn a lot more about the incident where Paul and Linda got mugged at night, and it just really puts you in those situations, and I have absolutely loved reading this book. Really looking forward to volume 2 that's going to be coming out. I don't think it's going to be too long. I certainly get the feeling that within the next 2 years we'll have volume 2 of this covering, I don't know exactly what time period, but certainly it's going to cover obviously a lot more of the 1970s. But going back to the Mark Lewison kind of analogies, like I said, I don't feel I need Mark Lewison to cover Paul McCartney's career anymore. He's never going to have time to do that anyway. Because this does it. The fact that we've got an actual acknowledgement from Mark Lewison here about his regard for the book, he's really on board with this. And it was when Alan and Adrian were sort of considering whether to turn this into a full-blown biography that Mark Lewison actually encouraged them to go for it. Was that so that Mark himself knew that he would be let off the hook and wouldn't have to do it himself? I don't know. But anyway, this book is certainly to Paul McCartney's early career what Mark Lewison has been to the Beatles' career. It's kind of that level of research, and we've not had that before. So there's only really one place that this book can go on my shelf. I've made a space for it. It's going proudly next to Mark Lewison's Tune In, because that's where it deserves to go. If you are interested in Paul McCartney as a musician, and especially that early 1970s period, which is such an interesting part of his life, then frankly, this book is better than any other book you've ever read on the subject. I'm confident in that, and I would absolutely recommend it to you. Fantastic read. Take your time with it, enjoy it, or just engross yourself in it for however many hours a day you like to read. It's taken me about 3 months to get through it, but I've absolutely loved it. Congratulations to Alan and Adrian. Fantastic book. What do you think of it? Have you read it yet? Let me know down in the comments. I would love to hear what you've thought of this book. I've also put some links down below. It's available in all good bookshops. If you need to get it delivered, then I've put links down below where you might be able to order it to get delivered to your home. So thank you very much for watching, and I will see you very soon. Bye.